Speaker, let me begin by congratulating the Right Honorable Raila Odinga for being a statesman and seeing where the elections were heading, where it would create a situation where we would not have a chairperson to represent the African Union in the secretariat and the administrative organ of the African Union. If he did not concede defeat early, we would have had a situation where we repeat the elections over and over again. Mr. Speaker, what the Right Honorable Raila Odinga demonstrated in the African continent is that as a leader, he has not always been there for his own gain. It has never been about Raila Odinga. It has always been about the good of the continent. When I was a young student at the University of Massachusetts, my third year, I took a course on international relations. And that is when I knew the complexity that exists when it comes to dealing with issues, international relations. The African continent was subdivided into two, Anglophone and Francophones. And these two separate ideologies are very complex. Anglophone countries have always demonstrated progress. They've always shown the way forward. But unfortunately, most of the Francophone countries have always been left behind. And you can see, even in the reasoning, you can see, even in the development of our countries. Anglophone countries have managed to be able to leapfrog on different sectors. If you look at Kenya as an example, Kenya developed the first money transfer system to be able to assist those less fortunate, people who are in rural areas, to be able to also get banking services. This is not something that is found across the continent of Africa. We have 55 countries. If Raila Odinga would have been given the opportunity to become the chairperson of the African Union Commission, to be able to advise the 55 presidents, to be able to give his wisdom on all the different organs of the African Union so that we achieve the African Union goal of 2063, where we have good hospitals, where we have good road networks, where we trade, this continent would have had a very different perspective on good leadership. But that never happened. And in fact, if you compare the two candidates, I dare say, even in terms of understanding of the role that the chairperson of the African Union Commission plays, Raila Odinga was way much above the gentleman who eventually won. And this is easily demonstrated by the speech of the gentleman who was now declared the winner, when he came out and said, oh, they came with money, they know, but we only came with God. It shows a complete different understanding of what that role is. What I expected of Mohammed is that he would have said, we are now here as a continent. My role now is to act as a real key advisor of all these 55 presidents. You know, a lot of people did not understand the role that Raila Odinga was going to play as a chairperson of the African Union Commission. The African Union Commission was established in 2001 and commissioned in 2002 as an organ to develop policy to support the African Union, heads of states. Mr. Speaker, you could equate it to the Council of Governors, where you have the Secretariat of the Council of Governors. The Council of Governors advises the 47 governors that we have in this country. So people took it differently, you know, but that shows how powerful Raila Odinga is in this continent. When you sit with the Honorable Raila Odinga, he'll tell you that the vision he has for Africa is to unite the Nile, is to drench the Nile, so that we can have transport directly from Egypt coming down to East Africa. I hope that now the new chairperson of the African Union would be able to borrow that from Raila Amolo Odinga. I love what Raila Amolo Odinga said, that I'm still available to offer my services, my advice to the African continent, if any other position arises. That shows maturity when it comes to leading Africa. We're a continent that is divided. And unless we all sit down together and reevaluate the 2063 goals of the African Union, by 2063, you will still find African countries that still people beg in the streets. I think I'm tired of seeing people beg. I'm tired of going to our counties and finding that we have got no medicine. Just because of the algorithm that is developed by international communities or India, United Kingdom, the US, when it comes to selling all their drugs to this country, that we cannot even develop our own drugs to be able to help our people get better. We just have to depend on this algorithm. I think it is about time that even if Raila Amolo Odinga did not become the chairperson of the African Union Commission, it is time for us to sit down with His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga and say, can you please demystify your vision so that even here in Kenya, we can be able to develop our foreign policy. We can be able to develop our foreign policy in a way that it assists us develop this nation. You know, when you sit with certain cabinet secretaries, they will tell you that the amount of wealth that we have in this country is enough to allow us pay all our debt, to allow us be able to lend money to other countries. These are things that we need to be discussing now. If we invest heavily in the mining sector of this country, we can be able to develop our economy. Mr. Speaker, sir, when I sit here, even the text messages that I receive of the potential of my own county of Narok when it comes to minerals is overwhelming. When I receive text messages of the potentials of where my good friend, the vice chair of PAC comes from, Taita Taveta, the potential of that county, the potential of Kwale in terms of the mining sector, that is enough to be able to help us leapfrog. And Mr. Speaker, with this current debate where America is talking about America first, where Germany is talking about Germany first, where they are saying now it is time for us to be real Americans. If you are a foreigner, ship off and go back to your country. I think it's about time that we take that unfortunate policy direction to make it better for us. Always take something negative and make something positive out of the outcome of it. If we can get these African brains who were economic refugees in America, who are economic refugees in Germany, come back and commit themselves in our continent, we can then be able to make a lot of progress. Mr. Speaker, I see this as a great opportunity for us to have our discussions on how we are going to end poverty in this African continent. Not only to talk about the war in DRC and Congo. You know, it's only the bearer, the wearer of the shoe that knows where it hurts the most. When people criticize the president of Rwanda for taking a particular position when it comes to this issue of the war, the conflict with DRC, they are not the ones who are going to receive all those refugees who are going to troop into that country, small country. It is only him who knows the position. So when my colleagues talk about us or criticize the current president of this republic that he should have taken a different position, the position that SADC wanted to be taken, yet His Excellency President William Ruto is the chairperson of the East African Commission, what do they expect him to do? To go there and deviate from the role that the East African community want, for him to go and give his vision? I think it is important for all of us to understand the dynamics that plays. It is important for us to understand what is in our interest. If we have our neighbors being stable, it helps this country. If Rwanda is stable, Kenya is assisted. If Tanzania is stable, Kenya is able to trade with Tanzania. But now, when we say that because SADC countries want a particular position, do we even go back and ask ourselves, what is this position? What exactly is fueling this position? When you take some time and you try to understand the dynamics, when you look at the economy of the DRC, you will see a lot of minerals in that country. When you look at the economy of South Africa, you will see a lot of minerals. Anyone who would want to be able to have a position contrary to what other superpowers want would want to align themselves in a position whereby they say, we are developing these minerals for ourselves, so let us bring our interests together, and that, in most cases, if we just jump in and we say, yes, this is the way to go, we might end up being isolated. So, Mr. Speaker, what His Excellency Raila Amolo did is something that, for me, I will always remember him as someone who has put the interest of not only Kenya, but African continent first before his own personal interest. You know, some of us, Mr. Speaker, in some of our own religious or personal moments, we even contemplated saying, since the position of the chairperson of the African Union Commission is to advise on policy, on the economy, politics, you know, as well as other areas to do with social affairs, why not split that commission into two? Why not split? And then we converge, we come together and sit down. Why don't we say the Anglophone countries have one commissioner, the chairperson, the other one has another commission, so that we now come and say, these are our social issues. Because, Mr. Speaker, when you find that the now current chairperson of the African Union is talking about, they came with all these, but we just came with God, instead of advancing and saying, now that the elections are over, let us go together as one, what would you conclude on? And my simple conclusion is that our differences in terms of our cultural upbringing will never help us be able to see that as diversity, as adding diversity. But it will always show us as if we are different. Mr. Speaker, there are people who, when you ask them, you know, in this world there are people who give advice differently. Some of them will tell you, if you want to know whether somebody is rich, look at their hand or look at their two fingers. If this finger is longer than the index finger, then that means that that person is rich. So those ones will always believe like that. There's no way you can come and change and say, maybe it's just the way your bone structure is formed. They will believe that you are the rich person. I want that we focus now, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to our foreign policy, I want us to focus on how we can be able to ease trade among our African countries. I want us to see how we can be able to utilize the Nile. You know, the source of the Nile is in the East Africa. It is the only river that goes up that East Africa does not control. How can you not control the source of your river? It is controlled in Egypt. Ethiopia and Egypt fight over it. But the source of it is where? Is in Uganda and Kenya. So really, it is time for us now to start asking ourselves, how are we going to benefit from our own resources? We cannot be slaves of our own resources. We now have to sit down and ask ourselves, now that we failed in making sure that we have Raila Amolo Odinga as the chairperson of the African Union Commission, why don't we rethinking and bring it back home and say, we have the East African community? Can we set up an East African commission that will look at our policy, will look at our politics, will look at our economic affairs, will look at our social affairs, and try to figure out how do we create this shock absorber? Today, Mr. Speaker, when you hear a president taking a position, and I think those wise men who set up the African Commission, and we put up a chairperson, was very wise. Because they did not want the president taking a particular position, they said, let us seek advice from an expert. That is why they set up. I think now we need to start changing, also looking at home, close to home, the East African community. It will be important, Mr. Speaker, that in the East African community, we achieve the goal of Julius Kambarage Nyerere. We achieve the goal of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. We achieve the goal of, what was the guy from Uganda called? I've forgotten his name. Milton Obote. I think it was Milton Obote. These are distinguished men who came before us. They are the ones who said, as a community, let us live together. If today you spend time with the president of Uganda, the only thing he'll talk about is the ideas of Julius Nyerere, the ideas of Milton Obote, the ideas of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. Let us now bring this debate back home. Let us stop whining and saying, oh, we lost because of ABCD. Let us build our East African community. Let us set up a commission here that will be able to guide us. We need to end poverty in Kenya. It is wrong, Mr. Speaker, for us as politicians. Every day you wake up. If you wake up in the morning, like 3 in the morning, and you just want to pray, and you accidentally take your phone to remind you, maybe on the subject that you wanted to pray about, the first text message that comes is that, oh, Mheshimiwa, my mother is very sick, I need X amount of money. You know, I long for the time when, in Kenya, no one will ever pick up a phone and send to a politician to say, please help pay for my medical bill, because our health care will work. You know, because our road infrastructure will work. Our education system will work. That is where we should put all our effort in this. And I believe that when we come together, President William Ruto, Raila Amolo Odinga, working together, this Senate and the National Assembly, I think for once we'll be able to make a difference. I want to congratulate once again His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga for the spirited effort. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, let me take 30 seconds. I wish I had more time to really condone with the family of our departed brother, William Cheptumo, not Kiptum, Cheptumo. This is a gentleman whom I really knew very well. I admired his dedication to the rule of law. I admired his reasoning when it comes to argument that has to do with the Constitution. He will be missed, and I want to tell the family that we are together and will forever pray with you.
Honorable Senators, it is now 1 p.m.